Jeff from Racing Rumble. As I mentioned earlier, Jeff does a wonderful job with the videos, and he's got a lot. I know a lot of support from the racetracks around, and he does a great job. Multiple cameras here lately. I always check those out on YouTube because it's sort of, even if I go to the track, I get to watch a replay of it, and they're a lot of fun to race. Jeff, first off, for everyone out there wondering the same thing, I did not say your last name because I'm wondering how in the world do you pronounce your last name?
So just checking to make sure that the mic is on. Can you hear me?
It is. You're there,
Okay,
buddy.
super.
Gotcha,
Actually,
buddy.
actually, actually, the last name is pronounced Sachse, and I had to teach my wife when we got married how to say my last name, and it's real simple. The socks go in the shoes, so Jeff Sachse.
Yeah, Soxy.
Yep.
Gotcha. And I'm going to tell you, I know this for sure. There's got to be a lot of people out there wondering the same thing. So, first of all, we got that out of the way. Because here's the thing here in our area, like our last names are pretty boring. Like we have Smith, Gad, Gabbard. We don't go out there, and we keep it simple around here. It really got me thinking about that. I just wondered, how in the beginning, like where did all these last names come from? I wonder if it's like, black sheep of the family, and the guy who, dad had last name Smith, and he's like, you're not a Smith anymore, you're a Gad, and so we got all these last names. I'm not sure, and it goes on down the road from there.
Well, I was a former racing promoter, so I've been called a lot of things.
Yeah, I bet you have. I guarantee you've been called a lot of things other than Soxy.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. You said you were a former race promoter, and I'd actually seen that on your following your Facebook page and following Racing Rumble. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. So having that background as a promoter, tell us about that. What was it you did as a promoter before?
Well, actually, I was always a racing fan. My family was involved in racing Hills Corner Speedway. We're talking back in the '60s and '70s in Wisconsin. And I was always a fan in the stands. And as I got a little older, I wanted to race, and my parents wouldn't really let me do that. So I got more into the PR end of it, and I worked for Slinger Speedway for a couple of years, just writing articles. And I had talked. Gentleman's name was Merlin Armstrong. He ran a track called 141 Speedway, and I was about 18 years old. And I had taken the money that I saved up over the course of 2 or 3 years and put on three specials for sportsman style cars up there. And one of the first things I found out about racing promoting was it's real easy to lose money. so, so, uh, so we took a stab at it then, and eventually I did wind up driving, and wound up getting married and getting out of racing, and got back in with something called Racing Online. I was building a lot of websites for tracks, and it came back around to racing promotion again, and I ran what was called the Wisconsin Challenge Series. That was for asphalt super late models, and that was actually very successful. We put on about 70 or 80 events, and after a period of time, I did it for basically 8 or 9 years, and was like, my partner's got some different ideas. He's got a racetrack. I'm going to bow out of this, and basically sold him my half and decided to relax for a bit.
I completely understand the last thing you said there. It is a tough thing. I'm sure being a former promoter yourself probably gives you a little bit of an advantage when it comes to working with some of our local promoters here and with what you're doing now. And I know they have to appreciate what you're doing really as a service to all of us, racetrack promoters, drivers, fans. When I used to drive, I would look forward every Sunday or whenever it was you got those videos up. Usually it was on a Sunday to be able to see that video.
Yeah, it was kind of a neat thing. We moved from Wisconsin to Kentucky 2 years ago. And because I was involved in motorsports, I wanted to see the different tracks around here. And COVID was already, in full tilt, so races weren't being held. But my wife and I would jump in the car and we'd drive around all the tracks, even though they weren't open. So I knew where they were when they did.
Yeah.
And finally, the track started to open up. I think it was about May or June of 2020. And I bought a ticket. I think Lake Cumberland was the first track I attended. And wife and I are sitting in the grandstands, and I'm watching races, and I realized to myself, I haven't really just sat in the grandstands and watched a race. And I was fidgety. I wanted to do something. But at the same point in time, I don't know anybody, so what am I going to do? And I went home that night and thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I did some videotaping for Seymour Speedway in Wisconsin. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Went out in the garage, found my camera, and next event or two, I showed up and started doing the videos. And I just, everything is always a progression. When I do something, I'm always trying to improve it the next week. And that's how Race and Rumble came around.
Yeah, you've definitely, from the beginning, so many improvements with like I said, with those multiple cameras and all that good stuff. And I kind of feel the same way. Years ago, I think it was back in 2011, 2012, something like that, we started dirt racing in the bluegrass, and that was really before live video became a thing. We would go to the racetracks and do live updates, and we even had a website and stuff back then, and we had thousands of people tuning into the website just to get those live updates because there was nothing like that around here. And then live video and other things came and sort of done away with that, and then became a fan for a little while, got the car myself, and then I started doing this again because for me it feels empty just to go watch a race. Like I sort of feel out of place. Is that sort of the same feeling you had?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, if you're used to have, especially if you're involved in PR work or from a racer, you have a hard time just being a fan. You got to do something. And that's how the video basically, it allows me to participate a little bit more than being just a fan at the track. And, I'm glad it's appreciated. The interesting thing was I didn't know how popular it was becoming until it was actually Brian Roberts. He called me up one day. He says, anytime you want to come here, we'll give you a media pass. And I'm like, well, this is really handy. And, well, if I don't have to buy the pit pass now, we're just going to start putting that money in a pot and we'll keep buying more equipment. And it started with Rock Castle Speedway. And then Brandon Hargrove also was interested in this, and Brian Abner. And Abner used to do video, I guess, back in the day. And, so between both tracks, I have an opportunity to really showcase the racing in Central Kentucky.
Yeah, it's an awesome thing that you're doing. And one thing I want to mention myself, Wes, I know you probably got some questions here. I'll let you, right after this, I promise I'll let you in, man. But one thing that I appreciate about what you do is something that we've also always tried to do with dirt racing and the bluegrass, and that is not just end with the late models. Put the spotlight on some of the support classes, modified super stocks, 4 cylinders, and you seem to always get those as well because some of the best action, really, I think, when it comes down to it, is in some of those classes. So I appreciate the fact that you always make a point to get them in and make them just as important as the late models and anybody else on the track.
Well, what happened there is, I think it was beginning of last year is one of the events at Ponderosa, and I was a little tired, but had a long day at work, and the program ran a little long, and it was getting like midnight. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna pretty big crowd here again. I'm gonna beat this crowd out here. And I jumped in my car and got down the road. And of course, there's a train that goes through their Junction City anyway, so I got to the train and sat for 20 minutes. And the windows are rolled down, and I could hear the car stop in the background running as I'm sitting there at the tracks. I'm like, oh, that must have been a yellow. And I never heard the cars fire back up. I'm like, wonder what that was all about. Anyway, I found out that the 2 races that were held after I left, which were the hobby stocks and the 4-cylinders, they ran green the checkered. So I felt like kind of a fool for leaving to sit there waiting for a train when I could have been at the track videotaping. So from that point on, I've always made a point to stick around and try to catch all those shows because those guys, they're paying the same money for a pit pass to get in, and I like being able to showcase what they do too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That is cool because you're right. When it comes down to it, those guys are spending their hard-earned money and time and all that, just like the super late models and any other class out there. And I know they appreciate it. One thing I always noticed with what we did on dirt racing and the bluegrass was that we would get as many interactions or reactions, I guess you would call it, on Facebook as far as likes, comments, shares, that sort of thing, from people in those support classes as or more than sometimes what we would get from the late models.
Well, the neat thing is, I have an opportunity to kind of look in the background a little bit as far as the numbers of what people are actually looking at. And it starts out pretty equal across the board after a race night because all the drivers and crews are checking in on their stuff. And there used to be a big gap when I first started. The super lates were having probably 5 times as many people watching the super late model stuff as opposed to the other division. And over a period of the last 2 years now, that's flattened out a bunch. And I can honestly tell you right now, as far as the late model racing goes, you got just as many people watching the crates as the supers.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Wes, I'm hogging the mic. You got anything for him, man? I don't wanna push you out here.
You're good, Josh. I was just going to ask him, and he kind of took my question away. So far, in your short time here in Kentucky, what is the favorite class that you like to cover um, across the bluegrass state? What's your favorite?
Well, I'm going to get in trouble if I pick one, right?
No, no, you won't get in trouble.
No, actually, there's three divisions where I see a lot of growth, and right now the crate length model thing I think is really hot. As far as the number of people jumping into that, you've seen people come right out of the mini stocks into the crate lates. You've seen people come out of super stocks in the crate lates, even the hobby stocks down at Lake Cumberland. I've seen guys go right from the hobbies to the crate lates. So yeah, that's a fun class to cover because the numbers are there and the racing's always very competitive because I think mechanically the cars are close enough to each other where the little bit of difference in driving style is the only separation you're seeing between these guys. So the racing's really good. I'm also a big fan of the super stocks that are running in the area, and mainly because there's a division up in Wisconsin called Grand Nationals. It's a very similar style of car. And those type of cars, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter what track conditions are, whether it's dry slick or super tacky or ruddy or whatever, those guys can race each other side by side all night, no matter what the racing surface. And I don't know if it's just the drivers in the division or that type of car. And, the class is fun to watch. And then the hobby stocks, I think, are really neat down at Lake Cumberland. The old school Camaros. That was really neat walking in there. The very first time my wife Rajai showed up, I'm like, man, those are late models from Wisconsin from 40 years ago. When I was a kid growing up, this is really cool to see this because we don't have that up there. We didn't have that style of car running anymore, so that was really neat. So those three classes catch my attention a lot.
Well, Josh and I, last couple of shows, we've kind of talked about the huge success here lately of your crate late model division, and it showed again Saturday night at Rockcastle with 39 crates. That's probably the biggest growth in class in the tri-state area right now, and they're fun to watch. We love our super late models, but the crates are putting on a pretty good show right now all across the state, and they're absolutely fun to watch.
Yeah, and I've kind of felt that that's kind of the future of the sport. And again, not knocking super leagues, they're amazing to watch when I get a chance to see them. Ponderosa's got an event coming up next Friday night, and I'll guarantee I'll be sitting in the stands for that one filming. And they're just incredible to watch. But I think for a weekly style car, it's come to a point where you just don't have enough of them around anymore that can compete weekly for the purses that are put out there. Tracks can't afford to put a $10,000 program on every week to win. And the crates have done an excellent job of filling in. And it's really neat to see some of the guys that used to run a super say, hey, this class is pretty fun. I'm going to join these guys and see how competitive I'm against them. So seeing Dustin Linville and Tommy Bailey and those guys compete against Jeff Watson and Logan Walls is really neat. And now you got all the guys running one class. It's good racing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's fun, and it's actually a discussion we've had here on some of our practice episodes, getting ready to go live beginning in August here on the Dirt Racing and the Bluegrass Live podcast. But in our practice episodes, we've had that discussion here. And I've got sort of, with some, what is an unpopular opinion, and that being exactly what you said, Jeff, I think crates are the future when it comes to late model racing in our sport. And I think when it comes down to it, once that transition is made, and I feel like it'll be made slowly over time, but once that transition is made, I don't think people are going to care that much when some of your bigger, more fan-following drivers are in a crate car versus a super, because at the end of the day, it's a race car and it's a late model, and they can put on a hell of a show, and that's what we all want to see, no matter what kind of motor's under the hood.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I don't really think a fan notices a second or a second and a half on the racetrack. If the racing's tight and the racing's good, that second and a half makes no difference. So yeah, I agree 100%. And I think this crate deal is really super. And if you can keep drawing car counts like what you saw at Rockcastle, or even on a regular Saturday night program, if you can pull in 20 to 22, 24 cars, that's a show. And I think the crates can continue to do that and be a headliner.
Yeah, you make a good point there, because the thing about it is, say 2008, maybe there was 25, 30 super late model drivers with cars right here in our area. And today, that's just not the case. I mean, you might have like what, 3, 4 guys that have competitive stuff that can go out and compete. I don't even know if there's that many in the super late model division. So it's just the way the sport's going, and I believe at the end of the day, it's a good thing. It's a good change for late model racing. Making that switch to crates. Jeff, before we let you go, I want to ask you, for me, seeing from when you first started to what Racing Rumble has turned into today with your videos and stuff, and just the amount of support that you've received, like we talked about, not just from promoters, you've had tremendous support from most of our supporters here in our area, promoters here in our area, but also from drivers and others and just people watching your videos. Did you think you'd have as much support as you've had at this point?
Well, no, it's a little bit of a surprise because one of the things I did is I'm keeping it a hobby. I'm keeping it fun, keeping it light, and I've let it grow pretty much organically. I've not gone out there with business cards, and I've not put up flyers or posters or anything like that, or T-shirts or decals. And I just wanted to let it grow on its own. And if people continue to enjoy it and support it, I'm like, hey, this is a cool hobby. People like it. I'll continue to do it. And that way you don't become overly invested in everything and feel like you absolutely have to be somewhere on a Saturday night. But because it's fun, I just keep showing up somewhere every single week. And choosing is once in a while hard because there's so many good places to go on a Saturday night that it's really a tough decision once in a while which way I'm going to point the car when I pull out of my driveway.
Yeah, I understand that for sure. Well, man, I do want to tell you, we appreciate what you're doing. I've been following you for a long time now, and I really appreciate what you're doing. You're doing a great job. I can't wait to see where you take Racing Rumble from here with the improvements you've already made. Man, I'm telling you, you do a great job. Be sure to follow Racing Rumble on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss any of Jeff's videos. Jeff, again, thank you so much for what you're doing for our sport. On behalf of everybody involved around here, I want to say thank you, and thank you for joining us on the show this evening.
Really appreciate being on there, and anytime you want me to come on and talk, glad to do it. And we're gonna keep on keeping on.
Absolutely, sounds good, man. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jeff.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, Jeff, Sachse. So we got that figured out. It's like putting on your socks, as he explained to his wife. So for everybody out there that was wondering, I just answered at least that question for you.